Hi there, Chris here. So starting on August 1st, I'm going to be hosting a quilt-along with my friend Pam over at Pammy Jane, and we will be making her new dead end quilt pattern. Now this is an FPP pattern, so today I'm going to be doing kind of a crash course in FPP and make one of the blocks so I can show you how it's done from start to finish. So once you buy the pattern, you will want to print off all of the templates onto paper. If you get the PDF version, you can just print them directly from the file. If you get the printed version, you will get this insert that has all of the different templates in it, and you will need to photocopy these onto paper. And each template is going to tell you how many times you need to make that copy so that you can make the completed quilt as seen. I went ahead and copied all of mine onto newsprint paper. I find it's easier to tear once you are done with all the sewing, but you can use any lightweight copy paper that you have. Another nice thing in the Pammy Jane pattern, it actually gives you rough cuts for all of the different fabrics so that you can cut them ahead of time so you are making the most out of your fabric for the paper piecing. So today I'm going to be making house number 1, which is this tall, skinny house right there. For that, I need the templates A, B, C, and D. So I'm going to cut those out. I'm just going to rough cut them around the dotted lines. Just like that. So I just rough cut them out. That dotted line is going to be our final trim line. So I like to have just a little extra on there. If you want to take the time to precisely trim them at this point, you can totally do that. Now, if you like, you could go through and cut all of these pieces ahead of time if you like. I'm going to cut them block by block. So I'll go through, I know that I need fabric 1, and I will find anything that's an A, B, C, or D and cut out those sizes. On the templates, you'll see this here says fabric 1. This one is fabric 5, fabric 1, fabric 5, fabric 1. So you know which color you're going to be putting down. And the pattern has the guide for which fabric is which. So I know I need fabric 1 and fabric 5. Now, since these are pretty much rough cuts that we're going to be using for the foundation paper piecing, you don't have to be super duper exact, but I would say to err on the side of cutting them a little larger than a little smaller. All right, now we are going to cut out our main print and we're going to do some fussy cutting, meaning we are going to specifically cut around a shape because these little guys are going to be in the doorways of the houses. One trick to help you fussy cut out and make sure that you get that character right in the center, you can take a small acrylic ruler and just some painter's tape, some masking tape, whatever you have, and mark off for the size that you need. That way you can move this around until you have that character exactly where you want to have them in the doorway. So you can move this around and then just cut, and we'll flip it and cut the other two sides. Just like that. All right, I've got my templates cut out and my fabric cut out, so now let's head on over to the sewing machine. So we're going to start with the foundation pieces. I'm just going to start with A and then go B, C, D, just to keep it easy. And I have all of my pre-cut fabric here that's used for the A template. And with foundation paper piecing, there is a specific order that you need to go in. So we're going to start with A1 and then go to A2, A3, A4, A5. Now, when I first started foundation paper piecing, the part that got me messed up every time was actually with the very first piece. We are going to be attaching the fabric to the back side of the template and sewing from the side that has the lines printed, because we will be stitching directly on those lines through the paper and the fabric. For this first piece right here, we want the fabric right side facing out. I also like to glue baste as I'm going, especially with larger pieces. So I just have a regular school glue stick, and my friend Sam designed and makes these precision glue caps, which just fit right on top. And then as you advance your glue stick, it's a much smaller tip, so you can get it just only where you need it to be. You only need a little bit just to keep that fabric in place. And again, this fabric is facing right side out. Another cool thing about these glue tips is the original cap fits right on top, so you don't have to worry about it drying out. All right, so that was A1. A2 is fabric 1, which is our background. So we're going to put that so it's right sides together with the other piece. And now we are going to stitch from the printed side of the template right on that line between A1 and A2. When I'm foundation paper piecing, I do shorten my stitch length, usually to about 1.8. That will just help when it's time to tear the paper out. I will also backstitch a couple stitches at the beginning and end of each line so that I don't pop any stitches as I'm tearing out that paper. So right there, you can see I have stitched that line right there. And it's through the paper and the fabric. Now, after each seam, we are going to trim that seam allowance. So you can just fold the paper back. I have an add a quarter ruler, which actually has like a lip on the back here. It's not required, it's just handy. Any ruler with a good 1/4 inch mark is fine. I'll just bump that up right along the paper. Trim it down to 1/4 inch. And now I'm going to finger press this open. You can finger press, or you can use like a seam roller, or a magic seam wand, or you can use a mini iron, whatever you like best. Now that we have A1 and A2, I am going to do a quick dab of glue. That way it stays in place while I'm sewing on the next piece, and really just a small dab of glue is all it takes. So now A3 is this piece here. We'll just put it right sides together. And we will line up the raw edges. Before I trim, I am gonna do a quick press just to make sure it fully covers the shape. And you can hold this up to a window or a light box to see the lines, or from the side of the printing. If you have a light, you can see where the fabric ends, just to make sure that this line it's fully covered and has a 1/4 inch seam allowance around it. So now we'll come back and trim this piece. So we'll just fold that, put our ruler, and trim. Now, trimming the seams after each time you stitch is important to help reduce bulk. Otherwise, you can end up with a really thick block that just gets hard to work with. All right, coming along pretty nicely. Now we're going to do A4. Now, this is our first angled seam. So what you can do, because if you just lined up the raw edges, it's not going to cover this triangle. So I'm going to fold back on the line that we will be sewing. And then trim off this excess fabric at a 1/4 inch. Another way you can make sure the fabric is right, and this will go for any foundation paper piece pattern, is fold it. So fold the paper back. So I've just drawn with a pencil through the paper so you can see where that line is going to be. And you can hold the fabric to make sure it's going to fully cover that shape. So we'll get that aligned, fold this back. And now before I trim that excess, I am going to fold along that seam to make sure that that triangle is fully covered. And it is. So on the back side, I can tell that the triangle is fully covered. It looks like it doesn't go all the way to the corner, but that's okay because another piece of fabric will come in right there. So now we will fold back the paper along that seam and trim off the excess to 1/4 inch. And then give that a good press with your finger or your seam roller. And then this is a larger piece of fabric, so I will just do a little dab of glue to hold it in place. That way it doesn't shift on me. Right? And then the last piece here, so this is the shape that I need to cover. So I'll fold that back. This one I am going to trim off that 1/4 inch. And I can tell this is at kind of a weird angle. So I need to make sure that that is fully covered because that's the shape I'm going for. So I can just kind of lift up to make sure that my shape is fully covered by the fabric that I'm adding. So that looks good. I'll unfold my paper and stitch through it all. And as always, before I trim, I'm going to fold that back, just give a light finger press to make sure that my paper is fully covered. And you just need to make sure you're covered to the dotted lines because that's where we're going to trim everything. And that looks good. So let's trim off this excess. And now we can finger press that back. Give just a little dab of glue. So we're going to trim on that dotted line all the way around. There we go. The roof is done. So now we'll follow those same steps to do the door and the 2 side panels that have the windows. These don't have any angles, so they're going to go pretty quick. With section B, the B2 fabric is the doorway, so that's where we have our little fussy cut animals that we'll want to make sure get centered there. So B1, that's our starting piece. And one reason I like using the newsprint is you can kind of see through it, but as long as you're using a somewhat lightweight paper, you should be fine. So then we'll get our piece lined up and glue basted in place. So remember, the first piece is going to be right side out. And now we're going to add our little puppy, and we want him to be right side up. So when we put these together, right sides together, he will be upside down. So then we will stitch through in between B1 and B2. Give that a little trim. I don't think there's much to trim off. And then finger press that open. And now B3 is right here. It's this long, skinny piece. Want to make sure any prints are right side up. Line up the raw edges and then stitch through the lines. This piece is pretty skinny, so I'm going to fold it back just to make sure it fully covers my area, and it does. Fold our paper back, and then we'll trim that seam to 1/4 of an inch. Then give it a good finger press. And do the same on the other side. And now we'll trim this piece on the dotted lines. Right, there's our center section. Now we just have the window units. So I'll just go through these real quick, and then I will come back and show you how to assemble the whole house. Okay, now that we have A, B, C, and D, the templates all sewn together, we can now assemble them into a house. So we'll need our templates that we've sewn, A, B, C, and D, and then one piece E that has just been cut from fabric. We will start by sewing B, C, and D together as a unit, and then adding A on top, and then E goes on the side with the chimney. Now there's a couple different ways to assemble foundation paper pieced sections together. You could, at this point, take the paper off and then sew them together, or you can leave the paper on, which also gives you a line to follow for your 1/4 inch. So that's what I'll do here. It does mean a little more fiddly tearing in your seam allowance when you get to that point, but that's okay. And for these seams, we will want to press them open. All right, so B, C, and D are together for the body of the house. So now we will add the roof on top. This is a great pattern, I feel, for beginner foundation paper piecing because there's no strange angles when assembling the sections together. All of the sections are squares and rectangles, which definitely makes it easier. All right, so I'll press that seam open. And then that piece E strip goes on the side with the chimney. And you just sew this with a 1/4 inch seam. Now for this seam, since this piece was not pieced in any way, I'm just going to press the seam out. I'm not going to worry about pressing that one open. And we have a finished foundation paper pieced, or FPP, house block. And there you have all the basics for doing foundation paper piecing. Again, starting August 1st, we're going to be doing a sew-along for the dead end pattern, so we'll be making this house plus 2 others, as well as some other elements for the quilt. All the information for that can be found on my Instagram. I'm going to leave a bunch of links down below for all the different products that I showed today, so if you want to get an add a quarter ruler or the precision glue stick tip, all of that information will be down below. And if you have any questions about foundation paper piecing or about the pattern, feel free to leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you next time.